Hello everybody, GrayStillPlays back again with another top 5, but this time we're going to be doing something a little bit different. Now anywhere online you can find top 5 best MMOs or top 5 upcoming MMOs, but let's today talk about the top 5 MMOs that never got released. These are MMOs that had a lot of hype and a lot of really cool concepts that I thought was neat, however, never made it past the beta stage. So these are going to be MMOs of my opinion, just based upon their concepts, not so much the gameplay or anything, because in these instances, we never even got to really see any gameplay. We got to hear a lot about the game and a lot about what the game had planned, but we never actually got to see the game. But from this, I would like to think that maybe one day, a million years from now, when this video actually gets some views, that some developers might take a look at some of these concepts and say, well damn, that's actually a pretty neat idea, maybe I'll give it a shot. Maybe these games were just too progressive for their time. For each game I'm going to try and include a date that the game was roughly going to be released or talked about in or canceled in, and also just the producers and a little bit about the game. So from there, let's start with number 5. And for number 5, we're talking about Age of Mourning, which later became Thrones of Chaos. This game was last heard about in December of 2006, and it was made by Loud Ant Software, which was later taken over by Quad Software, the game I mean. There was a couple of particular things about this game that made it different than some of the others. One in particular, the players that you played, or the characters that you played, would age. They would actually age in the game, and you got bonuses for how long they lived, and you could actually have lineages. You could create families and have your own little townships and houses and things where your family members would live. There was also no classes, everything was skill defined, and it was extremely PvP oriented. They kept saying about how hardcore and non-care bear and just ass whoopish the PvP was, where either you were in a group and you had a guild, or basically you died until you were sad or got yourself a group or a guild. Everything about the game was said to be very violent. Each race was going to have its own finishing maneuvers that you could do as kind of a, I don't know, a throwback to Yonder teabagging when you actually defeated your opponent. Now from there, we're going to go into number 4. And for number 4, this is going to be Dominus Online. This is circa 2002 by Digital Melt Studios. They wanted to create a first-person shooter type action-paced MMO fantasy traditional style game. Basically, they wanted to have the classic fantasy style of massive multiplayer online games, but they wanted to mix it with that fast-paced jumping, sprinting, shooting, dodging of a first-person shooter. Now, in the game, you could buy and run outposts and taverns, and basically you could buy any kind of housing and structure, and if you built up enough resources, you could actually own entire towns with your friends or guild or whatever have you. There was also no levels. Everything was skill-based yet again, so they said it would feel like less of a grind. I don't know how much I believe that. Usually, even if there's just skills involved, you still feel like you're sitting there swinging the sword over and over and over again to get a slightly higher sword level. But the way that they described their game was a mixture of Quake, for those of you who remember Quake from the olden days, and EverQuest, which of course was one of my top 5 old school MMO games. From there, we're going to move to number 3. Number 3 is going to be Winter's Twilight. I'm not going to lie, I love the season of winter. I like snow, even though I don't get to see much of it anymore. Now, this game had its last updates right around January of 2007, I should say, like press releases, and it was by Pixel Bridge. The idea here was that there was going to be multiple PvP scenario styles of gameplay. In other words, you could do 1v1 if you wanted to, you could do group PvP if you wanted to, and you could do giant, open guild versus guild PvP if you wanted to. You could also create safe zones with diplomacy. So the players themselves would actually work together and designate if there would be any safe zones or not. So I guess you would hope that the guilds that ruled the server there were somewhat lenient toward people that didn't have powerful guilds. You could have levels without ever fighting, since there was experience to be gained through crafting skills alone, like geology and alchemy. That was pretty new at the time. Remember, we are talking about 2007 at this point. And something I like is giving a little bit back to the players by making them feel important. You could do heroic deeds and gain something called attention points, which the developers would then use to rank you and then put you actually in the in-game news on like little tavern bulletin boards and stuff like that for the things and deeds that you had done. Now that's pretty sweet. I think that it's nice that a developer takes the time to make players feel important, even though I'm not sure they can accommodate everyone, obviously. There's also 100 different unique animations per race, and as you gained experience points, you spent those on different specialization skills to kind of customize the character as you wanted. Now we're going to go into number 2. This is Wish, which was canceled in January of 2005, and it got close. It was in beta. This is by Mutable Realms, but we never got to see it. This was going to be the first quote-unquote ultra-massive multiplayer style game, and it was only going to have one server. That was the plan. There was not going to be any additional servers. Everyone, no matter how many people chose to pick up the game and play, were going to play on one server. That is a lofty goal, and they had to have some sacrifices in order to do it, like a point-and-click style of movement, and no auto attack. You had to press buttons over and over again to actually do your attacks. Now, there were no preset cookie cutter quests in this game. What the developers had was a system where they could utilize this kind of program to auto-generate quests on the fly, which were as simple or as complex as they wanted, and they would literally hand them out to people in-game. That is really burdensome, I would think, on a development team, but super cool. That's really neat that every time you play that game, every time you load that game up, you know you're going to get a different experience. The encounters were going to be dynamic, meaning that the monsters would spawn based upon your level and where you were in the world. So there was always going to be something for you to fight and do, and then the world itself would change based upon how you would perform. If you had a great battle and you did amazingly, you could possibly have like a statue that would be erected in the area to commemorate your greatness. Skills also degraded over time if you didn't use them, but there had been some talk of like a skill lock so that they didn't go below a certain level, so you didn't feel like if you took a break or something like that you were going to be horribly punished. And then there was a real stealing and thieving system in there, where players would get tasked not only to rob people, but also to break into houses and burglarize their stuff as well. Now from there, we're going to go with my undisputed number 1. And this was the Chronicle, canceled back in December of 2006 by Rapid Reality. Oh, the Chronicle. Why did you have to disappoint me so? This was going to have 9 races and 27 sub-races. It was going to be completely classless, meaning that you worked on your skills as you wanted, and each account could have what was called a, quote, main character. This main character performed different from your other characters because it advanced faster, it had a bunch of special bonuses, but the weird part was that you could die permanently. When you died, you went to the Death Realm, which was an instance specifically designed for that character's power level, and you had to battle your way out of the Death Realm and basically complete the Death Realm's task that it set out before you. Now, while you were dead, a special NPC would hold all of your items, and if it took too long to get back to the NPC, instead of handing them over to you, they would actually get put up for auction so other characters and players could buy your stuff. Your character was a 3D model. That was the plan. There was actually going to be a 3D model for every character that had weaknesses and exposed armor, and the actual places on your body could be attacked by weapons and spells, meaning that if you found an exposure in the armor, you could actually attack it and do bonus damage. And what does that mean? Does that mean no bikini armor? Oh god, no. How would any MMO player survive without it? But I guess that was the plan. Speaking of armor, all of it was going to be racially specific, meaning that a fairy couldn't wear ogre armor, for instance, so that the armor crafters actually had to cater to all these specific markets that they were going to have to deal with because of how many races there were. And there was also going to be true weapon range. So a spear, if you equipped it, would have a longer attack than, say, a dagger. It wouldn't just be DPS or the style of weapon. And the actual characters themselves, the races, would have different effects on the weapons. So an ogre would have a much longer reach than, say, a gnome, so he can hit things farther away, but the size of the characters would actually have an impact on the environment as well. So something huge like an ogre would not be able to get into all the places in the game. He would be too large to go through certain doorways and into certain caves and such. And the gnome, or something very small, would have a slight advantage because they would be a tiny little 3D model character that would be super hard to hit, since you're actually having to hit that character rather than just like a weird hitbox or what have you. So those are going to be my top 5 MMOs that never ended up getting released. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you think that you know of an interesting MMO that never got to see the light of day, please put it in the comments section. Also, if you have any particular top 5 that you would like to hear my opinions on, I would be more than happy to share them. And remember guys, by hitting that like button, it does in fact promote sexual and mental well-being. I'll see you guys later. Much love. Bye-bye.